Today I wanted to talk with you about harvesting for distillation and methods of production. And when I was thinking about what would be of value to you, I was thinking about the time of year really, because it's I don't know about where you guys are. I see some of you are in Oregon, but where we are here in Portland, where the campus is, it's been very hot, and I'm really seeing already that plants are maturing fast. And so I wanted to be sure that if you are keen on distilling any of your herbs, then you'll know what to do. First of all, I really want to ask who in class has distilled in the past and who plans to distill this year. If you can just type in the chat box, I'll be able to see that here, and that will give me an idea of where you're at and what you want to know. So basically, just a hands up moment. Hands up if you've distilled in the past and you could tell me that, if you know how to distill or if you have some experience with distillation, and then hands up if you want to start doing it this year, or you're just interested in thinking about it. So just give me an idea of what your interests are. So I am just going to make absolutely sure we're recording this. Okay, excellent. Because I was thinking about all the students who said they wanted to come but couldn't attend at this time, and I know that's hard, but we will record it for those students. And just quickly going forward, I'd be real happy to hear from you how this type of presentation worked for you, whether you enjoyed the format, and I'd certainly welcome any feedback, because if it works for you, we can do more of it. So let's get started. I have done quite a bit of distillation. I mean, I'm by no means an expert, but one of the things I do know, and a lot of this is from my work in Greece, where we actually do hands-on sustainable wildcrafting at our Greek study abroad summer school, and we gather the plants and we take them back to the small distillation facility we have there, and we actually make oils. It's really a great experience. So one of the first things you really have to be sure of, particularly if you're looking at producing therapeutic oils, is to correctly identify the plant, and you'll see that here on my screen. So Barbie, you're saying you haven't actually seen the process of distillation, just online assignments. Well, great, that's going to be wonderful. So we'll talk a bit today about that, and hopefully you can make it to one of our study abroads. Or where are you located, Barbie, if you don't mind me asking? Because we are doing that lavender distillation at Sherwood. Oh, okay, so maybe if you get a chance, come up to that. You're not too far away. And Summer, you're in the same boat. You haven't actually done any distillation, you haven't seen it, but you'd like to. So good. Well, let me know, if you are around, we can send you some information on the lavender distillation day that we're going to have up at Sherwood Lavender Farm. So you can always also come and help cut and distill plants up there and take away some essential oils. It's a lot of fun. One of the first things you have to do, though, is ensure that you have identified the plant correctly. It's absolutely essential. If you're harvesting from the wild, which is really what we like to do a lot of, you want to make sure you've identified the correct plant, because there's nothing worse than taking the wrong plant, and know what part of the plant you're going to harvest for distillation. Now, not all parts of the plant will contain essential oils. That's very important to realize, because if you put the entire plant in there and, for example, it's in seed, you've really defeated your purpose. It's not to say that you won't achieve some result. You might achieve a very nice hydrosol. For example, the water that's left over after the distillation process also has therapeutic potential, but you won't have what you set out to achieve. I.e., so I always think if I'm really, for example, looking for a therapeutic plant, a therapeutic result from my essential oil, you have to ensure that it's the correct plant, the correct part of the plant, etc. So identifying the plants. First, you want to know what family the plant is in, and I know, you're all in class, you all have done some work with looking at the Latin name, the common name, and the family name. Now, we know that learning plants, learning Latin, learning family, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of memorization, and there's no harm in looking something up. But as long as you realize, don't rely on the common name. There's too much misconception about common names. It's a very cultural thing. People might have the same name for completely different plants. So as much as possible, rely on the Latin. And learning family is really going to help you understand the differences within groups of plants and the way they look. So, and we'll get to this example later on, so just to give you a quick example, the family that lavender is in, the Lamiaceae family, all those plants have square stems. It's a great way to identify a plant in the Lamiaceae family. And they all have somewhat typical constituents. They have somewhat typical volatility, etc. So they're all, aromatic, volatile plants. You're only going to collect plants free of insecticides. Well, that's kind of a no-brainer, or artificial sprays. Now, that's sometimes hard. I say no-brainer, but it's sometimes really hard to tell. So, and obviously you have to get permission if it's an area, where, it's a forest area or something like that. And, there are forest departments in each state, forestry departments that you can check in with and make sure that, you're getting the permission you need. So we already said common names are not a good tool. So basically, think about a systematic way to identify plants. It's really good to start with the leaf shape. And when you look at leaf shape, you want to look at margins, and you want to look at their arrangements on the stem. Okay, great, Summer. So you're going to come to that workshop. Awesome. I think Renee put the link up there, so anyone else who's interested in that or has any questions about that, just let us know. So do feel free to just post questions as I talk. I am looking at the chat box. Renee will let me know if I've missed any, and any I've missed we can address at the end. So you're going to look at the leaf shape. You're going to look at the margin of the shape, and by that I just mean the edge of the shape of the leaf, and you're going to look at how they're arranged on the stem. 3 things to do with leaves. And you're going to use that to identify plants even when they're not in bloom, because a lot of people rely on the bloom of a plant to identify it. And sometimes when you're harvesting, wildcrafting, you actually want to identify the plant before it blooms, because it may be just as it's coming into bloom is the very best time to harvest it. So you can't rely on the bloom or the flower. So how to identify leaves? Just quickly, we talked about margins. We talked about, having to look at that edge. Look at the edge. Is it smooth? Is it toothed? Is it jagged? Is it doubly toothed? Are there little small teeth and then large teeth? It's kind of fun looking at leaves. Even if you can't identify them, just start by looking at the different shapes. And then that really kind of opens up your mind to the ways, you can actually identify. Tell me, has anybody in the class studied botany? And you can just type in the chat box as we go to let me know if you have that training. And you will be doing, depending on the course, are you all in the aromatherapy courses, programs? So you do some botany within those classes, but, I don't want to go on about this if a lot of you know what I'm already. Okay, Erin, you took botany, excellent. So you know what I'm talking about. So great. So basically, you're going to look at whether the leaves are hairy or smooth. You're going to look at the shape. Is it linear? Is it round? You're going to look at the number of leaves. Does it have a petiole, which is just the name for stalk? Botany has its own language, by the way. It's kind of interesting. Or does it clasp the stem? Do the veins run outward from the centre vein, or are they parallel to the leaf margin? These are all important identifiers. I just gave you some leaf shape. It's a bit blurry, this image, but you can sort of see what I'm talking about, the huge variety. There's whorl, there's alternate. So like alternate just means, you know, each side of stem is a leaf, opposite, which is, you know, one here and one there. Opposite is when they're clearly opposite each other, and so on. You're then also going to look at the stem. Now, I actually find that the stem is, you know, often overlooked when you're really trying to identify, but is one of the most vital things to look at. You're going to look at the colour of the stem. That's really important. That's really important. So Erin would be like, she would like to be made a presenter. Can you do that? So Erin, are you going to speak up? Is that what we're going to do here? Let's try it. You've got a question or a comment? So basically you're going to look at the colour of the stem, and what's important with that is, take for example wild carrot and hemlock. Those are two very similar looking plants. They both have square stems, yet hemlock is a very red fleck through the stem. Very, very important stem coloration difference. Erin, can you hear us? Can we hear you? If you just type yes in the box if you can hear me. For some reason I can't hear you.
Might be, excuse me guys, there might be an icon for you to click to, Erin, to unmute yourself if you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, so can you see the icon where you have to unmute yourself? I'm glad you can hear me. And we can actually have up to 6 people
on their webcams.
On your webcams here. So you should be able to see left-hand corner where the audio is. Is that where it is, Renee?
Yeah, it's on the dashboard on the left-hand corner.
So you have, oh, you cannot find the audio.
You can also try calling in if that's easier, Erin. But if not, you can just type it in and we can read it. There's, you know, that works too.
Yeah, but if you want to, you can call in on your phone, and I don't know, do you, Renee can put that number and code in again to make sure you connect. And, you know, the more we do these, okay, so Julie, you're watching on your computer, but you've called into here. So can you try, Julie, can you try asking a question, and we'll just see if the rest of the class and myself can hear you?
Yeah, so she's not connected to audio.
Oh, you're not connected to audio? All right. All right, well, we'll move on. As I said, first time we've tried this, we've got some technical difficulties. We'll figure it out, hopefully by the end of the lecture. So we're looking at what shape is the stem. I talked a bit about the colour. I gave you an example of when it's most important, hemlock and wild carrot. Is it hairy? And that's a really useful thing to notice, because in some plants, for example, chickweed, Stellaria media, beautiful little herb. It's one of my favorite mild diuretics. Just fantastic herb, very nourishing. You can eat it fresh in salads. It's quite hard to identify if somebody doesn't point it out to you, and there are plants that look like it. The pimpernel can look a lot like Stellaria media. But if you look at Stellaria media, it's got a square stem, and you've got to look at it quite closely or use a magnifying glass, and you'll see that there's hairs up one side of the stem, tiny little hairs, all the way to the leaf, and then it completely goes around the other side of the stem when it hits the leaf, and there's none on, so it's not completely around the stem, it's only up one side, hits the leaf, and then goes over to the other side of the stem, and little hairs go up. So it's a great way to identify chickweed. Are there thorns, warts, bark, scales, or other markings? Those are all important. So I'm not seeing any questions yet. I can see we're still just sort of getting our calling. As long as everyone can hear me, and you can, you're always welcome to type your questions in the chat box. Flowers, what colour is the flower? How many petals are there? Are the petals spread wide? Is the flower more tubular? Is the flower symmetrical? Does the flower have a spur? Now these are important things for a plant. Take for example lavender. Now, you know, you probably all know about the difference between lavandula angustifolia and lavandin. And, you know, being able to actually identify that visually and say, you know, okay, well, that is lavandin, because frequently plants are sold, or you might be, you know, in a lavender farm where something's mislabeled. So it's really important that you understand how to identify from a flower and from the shape of the stem, from how many, you know, leaves there are on the stem, and just the general appearance of the plant. Fruit and berry characteristics. Obviously, don't taste a berry unless you know exactly what it is. There's some berries out there that are extremely poisonous, not this one. This is actual huckleberry. But it's good to look at the colour of the fruit. Is the outside of it hairy, powdery or shiny? Is it pulpy or juicy? Is it a round berry or a compound berry, so like made up like a raspberry of lots of tiny little berries? And that again is just going to help you identify and differentiate. So looking at seeds, because there are some plants you do just want to distill the seeds. What do the seeds look like? Do the seeds have a transportation mechanism like barbs, spurs, wings, swirls, you know, like a maple, or a sycamore, or parachutes like the seeds of dandelions? They're all good ways to identify seed characteristics. So, okay, we just did a really quick whirl through the how to correctly identify a plant. Obviously, it's something that you don't learn overnight, but it's, you know, a great thing to study. It's a great way if you enjoy going out walking, you know, to focus on the plants around you and, you know, collect some leaves as you go, and even if you bring them back and, you know, put them up against your botany book and you know, really start experiencing the difference in the plant world. So once you've identified the botanical correctly, then you really have to know what part of the plant to harvest. Now this is really something that you have to study and learn. I mean, you can certainly, you know, pick a leaf and smell it. You can certainly squish a seed or chew on a seed and taste an essential oil. And these are all good things to do as well, because as you are smelling and organoleptically experiencing the actual plant, it is developing your organoleptic memory, and you will be able to really align that with the essential oil. My ideal is to be able to pick a plant, taste it or smell it, and know if it has thuone in it, know if it has linyl acetate in it, be able to taste the linalool, etc. So, you know, that takes years of experience. To give you an example, I was lucky enough to work with it is almost like wine tasting, Barbie. That's absolutely true. And yeah, I was lucky enough to be working with a distiller down in the Willamette Valley. I mean, not really working, you know, he was one of our suppliers, and I just used to love visiting him and really learning about how he distilled. And he was a really old man. He'd done it for many, many years. I mean, he was an artist. I mean, distillation is an art. It is also scientific, but it really is an art. I mean, it's a process. You have to pay attention through the process. But I'd love to hang out with him because he could identify purely by smell about 150 constituents within essential oils. So he was like my, you know, I just absolutely adored his knowledge, and so, you know, I spent a lot of time trying to, you know, really enjoying learning from him. But it's a great thing to do. Just, you know, taste plants, smell plants. Obviously, you're not going to taste plants that could be potentially poisonous, you know, and you have to be careful. You have to overlay what you're doing with a certain amount of common sense. But you really only want to collect the part of the plant that you're going to use for distillation. So again, you don't want to dig up your lavender when you're harvesting for lavender. You know, there's nothing in the root. You wouldn't want to, if it's just the seed, cut the plant at the base and distill the whole thing. And you might wonder why. You know, I mean, you might wonder, well, wouldn't I get the oil out anyway? Well, you would, but it's not efficient. Now, distillation uses energy, and usually the energy is sourced from either electricity or it's sourced from wood, if there's a separate boiler that is boiling the water. And we'll learn more about the process of distillation in a little bit. But normally it requires energy, and so energy costs money. Energy conservation is important, and you know, even if energy is inexpensive, it's important that you know, everything we do is sustainable, that we harvest sustainably, that we prepare our oils with, you know, sustainability in mind, and we don't waste, and we certainly, you know, don't waste plants. So if you collect more than you need, or if you collect, you know, the wrong part, you've essentially removed that plant from the environment for no reason. And we also have to remember that plants aren't necessarily on the planet for us. I mean, the ecosystem is, wherever that plant is growing, the ecosystem is relying on that plant. There may be birds wanting to eat the seeds. There may be, you know, berries going to be produced that are important. Of course, bees, wild bees, etc., on the flowers. So it's important that we realize the plant is really important, not just for us. Underground parts, roots, rhizomes, tubers, and bulbs, they also give essential oils. So valerian, for example, is something that you would distill the root. Another good one is ginger, the rhizome of ginger. Again, you would want to dig the root. And of course, there are ways to, when you dig the root, you would prepare it in order for it to distill most efficiently and effectively. So, and then everything above the ground, the stem, the leaves, the flower, the fruit, the seeds, the stem and the bark. Of course, it's not always going to be all of that, but something like petitgrain, for example, you do harvest the pretty much almost like coppicing a small shrub, like pruning a small shrub. You would basically just, and you know, petitgrain is the twigs, the leaves and the stem of bitter orange. So you're basically just cutting that plant, you know, maybe, you know, I've seen it. I was actually down in Paraguay at a petitgrain distillery down there. Fascinating to see the way they manage the plantation. They keep the plants small. I would say they're at about, you know, maybe maximum 4 feet, and they come along on an oxen cart, big cart pulled by a couple of oxen. They've got big machetes. The men will jump off, take the bush, harvest it with, you know, pretty much a couple of swoops of their machete, and leave about maybe nearly 2 feet of the plant to regenerate. And you know, cropping like that, they were getting numerous crops per year from, it was a fairly large field, but they were able to produce wonderful petitgrain. So, so where are essential oils produced? Well, again, you know, I often think of plants like your friends. I mean, it'd be great if you could just they all had similar characteristics, and you know, you just didn't have to really, you know, if someone got really quiet, you're like, oh, you know, what's wrong? I mean, you know, you just sort of knew. And plants are the same. You really do not know. These are things you have to learn. Like your friends, you have to get to know plants. You have to get to know, you know, where the oils are. So there's no general site. There's nothing common. I mean, they are all plants. That's about it. But I talked about families. Families often show similarities. So generally, if you have a Lamiaceae, like the lavender is in the Lamiaceae or the Clary sage, you're going to take, you know, the oil is primarily in the flower, but you're going to take the leaf and stem as well to some extent. What is common is that essential oil synthesis takes plant part in specialized cells. Now this is really where it gets interesting, because each plant is going to have produce those aromatic volatile molecules and within specialized cells, and some of them may be actually isolated from the rest of the plant. I mean, if you think about it, essential oils can be highly toxic and very concentrated. So, you know, the plant in some ways has to protect itself from it. And then, of course, as you know, I mean, you're all studying aromatherapy, you know that just like wine, Barbie, you hit the nail on the head, environmental conditions like carbon dioxide, water, they all are going to affect not just the finished product, but your yield. How much oil are you going to get from this plant? And that's also why it's important to harvest at the correct time of day and the correct time of the plant's life cycle. So there's two aspects to correct time. So that's very interesting. So let's look at these specialized cells. So why we have to, first of all, you might wonder why we even care about these specialized cells. Well, if you have a plant where the cell is something called a trichome, it's kind of on a almost like a stem if you look at it close up, and the cell itself is on the end of that stem, and it's very easy when you harvest a plant that has those to burst them. And if you harvest, I want to say carelessly, but it's not really carelessly. I mean, it's that you just might not know it has those essential oil secretory structures. You could actually damage the plant to the point where you significantly would reduce your yield. And I'm a great believer in, you know, if you're going to make an effort and do something, you may as well do it as good as you can so you get the best results, right? Because harvesting a decent amount of plants to really get a decent yield from essential oils it's hard work. So Barbie, you were saying elevation. Some are more toxic than others. Some most use the carrier oils while others do not. Let me just go back. I might have missed something. Elevation is important. I might not have mentioned that, but you know, one thing about elevation, Barbie, that and the rest of the class you might know this, is the higher elevation some plants grow, they, particularly for example like lavender, lavandula angustifolia, if it's at a higher elevation, ideally over 1,000 feet above sea level, you are going to get a higher percentage of linyl acetate, which is the ester, which is the, you know, anti-inflammatory constituent. Of course, the synergy in the plant. So, you know, we're not saying we want to take that out or bump it up or anything like that, but it is really the anti-inflammatory constituent within lavender, and it will increase the higher the altitude. So that's why when you, and of course you wouldn't do this with each bottle, but you know, when you're buying, you know, good quality lavandula angustifolia, you want to ask the distiller, do they know what altitude it was grown at. Of course, you know, you get a GCMS and you can see what the linyl acetate is, and that's you know, that's a way to tell also. So, oh, Barbara, you watched one of our videos and this was mentioned, about the toxicity of oils. Is there such a thing as a hybrid essential oil? I think, I'm not sure what you mean by a hybrid essential oil, Erin. Maybe, do you mean from a hybridized plant? If a plant is hybridized, can you make an essential oil from that? If that's what you mean, okay, that's what you mean. Well, yes, you can. I mean, you can definitely produce therapeutic materials from hybridized plants. Having said that, my preference is to always use a plant that is the plant that's specified, for example, by the pharmacopoeias. So you'll find a lot of the information I'm telling you today, other than in your course, if you can access any of the, you know, really older pharmacopoeias, the British pharmacopoeia, the American pharmacopoeia, they give you the plant that it should be. So take, for example, echinacea. Now, while we're not necessarily going to make an essential oil from echinacea, we do know that it's a very, very important therapeutic herb, and it does produce a wonderful tincture or extract or even tea you can make from echinacea that is fantastic for immunity. So you really want to ensure that you have the echinacea that is specified by the pharmacopoeia. There are many, many hybridized echinaceas out there. You know, they're more of the commercial plants that you would find in the nursery. And I just think there is potential for the constituents, the medicinal constituents, to be reduced when a plant is hybridized. But certainly you can go ahead and make an essential oil. I mean, that would be really quite interesting, particularly if you're using an aromatic plant that is one that is hybridized. I'm really trying to think what plants. I mean, lavender, for example, is a really good one. I mean, there's a huge number of hybridized lavenders out there. And it would be very interesting to make essential oils from some of these and, you know, get them tested and see what they have in them. And I mean, sometimes an oil is fantastic just because it smells great. I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be always the, you know, the therapeutic potential doesn't always have to be great. It can just smell good. And that in itself is therapeutic. So we have these specialized cells called idioblasts. I hope that answered your question, Erin. Internal secretory structures or glands, external secretory. So let's take a look at these because it's hard to sort of visualize unless we look at them. So here we have what I talked about. I didn't go too far, did I? No, I didn't. 13. So here we have this single secretion containing cell. And I wish I hadn't put the name up there because then I'd all say, okay, you've got to guess what this is. I mean, isn't that just amazing? Of course, it's a close-up. This amazing woman, Katerina Saboda, she, you may have seen her book. Oh, you're learning that right now in Aroma 501. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, her book's amazing. I mean, and why is it important to know this? When you have a rhizome like this, that, you know, the oil globule is just oozing from this secretory cell, and, you know, all these starch granules are clearly visible. The minute you process the ginger rhizome, you want to distill it because you're exposing the secretion-containing cell. And we know, now, what's one thing we know about all essential oils? This is a question. Type it in the chat box. One thing we know that is common to all essential oils, they have to have it in order to be an essential oil. We all know it. Starts with B. Okay, I've given you a, hey, Julie, you got it. they're all volatile. Yeah, because so the minute you expose these cells to air, you expose the essential oil, it might nick it, it might burst if you handle it incorrectly. Yay, Aroma 101. That's great. Yeah, well, Erin, never mind. You've got to type fast, right? I bet you knew it, so don't worry. So yeah, so I mean, it's amazing. I just think this is incredible about ginger. When I cut my ginger now when I'm cooking, I do it with way more respect. Just thinking these big hunking cells are in there full of those, full of that wonderful essential oils. This is eucalyptus. So this is an internal secretory structure. Oh, Erin, you sneezed and could not type it in. Well, and I have to admit, my typing is terrible, so I'm glad I'm not at the other end of, I'm glad I'm not sitting in class because I'd be asking questions full of typos. But don't worry, I'm really good at reading typos. So eucalyptus is interesting because you can see here it's completely different than the rhizome of ginger. This is actually Eucalyptus citriodora, but this is common to all citrus. It's not just citriodora. The leaf structure, the essential oil, is well within the wall, the cell wall of the eucalyptus itself. So what does that mean when you're distilling? Basically, when you harvest eucalyptus, you don't have to be quite so careful. You're not going to be, obviously you don't want to completely destroy the leaves and stem before you get it to the distillery, but it's going to hold up a little better than something like the ginger rhizome that could easily be damaged. So this is common to all eucalyptus. Rosemary, look at rosemary. Now rosemary is an external secretory structure. You think that is on the leaf surface. So when you pick a rosemary leaf, this is essentially what is going to burst when you rub it with your fingers and put it to your nose. This is what you're doing. You're bursting the secretory structures and the volatile material inside is escaping. The molecules are escaping and you're able to smell it. So when you're distilling, this is what you are accessing, these cells, not everything else. I mean, there will be some other material coming over, but this is what you're accessing. Yeah, it is why it smells so wonderful when you rub it. That's true. That's a good point, Julie. Why do plants produce essential oils? Just quickly, they're powerful attractants. They are beneficial because they help the plant from predators. They might provide some protection. They say that cedarwood oil, for example, protects and preserves the wood, stops moisture and insects getting in. I mean, there's a variety of different reasons. Just as different as the plants are, there's different reasons. So that's just sort of an oversight of that. Where do plants store their essential oils? I just wanted to quickly look at this. Fennel and the seed, eucalyptus the leaves, rosemary the flowering tops, geranium the leaves and flowers, and bitter orange, ideally, the peel. I mean, they can do the whole, you can do the whole fruit, but it's not as desirable. Yes, smelling and remembering, that is rosemary for sure, Barbie. Yes, and you will be able to get a copy of this summer. And yes, do not bother taking notes. It's being recorded. We don't want any flare-ups of arthritis, but if you do get a flare-up after this, you can use peppermint oil. That will help. So, I think you do have this in your course as well, but we will give it to you recorded so you get my lecture over the top. So how are we actually going to start collecting? We're going to first conduct a preliminary survey of the area. We know what to collect because we've already identified. We know how much plant material is needed. We're never going to harvest more than we need, and especially when wildcrafted. So this field on your screen that you can see on my screen is the time fields that we harvest when we're in Greece. and we make oil from this plant. And here we are actually getting all rigged out in our sheets to actually go and harvest. The way we tie our sheets is these are just regular twin bed sheets. The way we tie our sheet is a traditional method used in both France and Greece, and probably other parts of the world, but that's where I first saw it. I actually first saw it in the very high altitude region of the mountains above Nice, when I went out with one of the distillers there and helped her gather the wild lavandula angustifolia from the hills. And she was tying a sheet. Your hands free, it's really easy. You can cut, put it in, and then you just develop this lovely big bag of this lovely sheet filled of plants. And you know, you're not going to crush or overfill anything. Never use plastic. You can just use a box or a paper bag if you haven't got a sheet, but you know, it doesn't give you the hands free. Obviously, if you're picking more than one plant, you've got to indicate what it is, because it's amazing when you've picked a lot of plants how you can forget. And you're never going to leave the plant material in the bag, or for example, in this case, in the sheet, longer than it has to be. Sustainable. I talked about sustainable before. It really is essential when you're wildcrafting. You're never going to strip a plant. You're only going to take what you need. Take scissors or a sickle. Don't just hack away at the plant. Don't damage it. Don't leave it damaged. You know, never leave a hole in the ground if you have to dig a root. Always leave some root. If you're taking seeds, leave some seeds so it will regenerate, so it's there next year. Leave some of the plants. Replant some of the roots, scatter some of the seeds. We like to, when we're wildcrafting, we like to do it with, you know, just like an awareness of really like intent. You know, this plant is special. We're taking it from the environment. The plant's going to share with us its therapeutic potential, and I like to show respect, give a little offering, you know, say a little prayer, in whatever form that works for you, and just really mindfulness is what it's about. It makes the whole process, I believe, much more rewarding. It's true most things in life, but also I do believe that the material you produce is almost imbued with intention. Intention's important. The other thing to be aware of is many medicinals are becoming endangered. So I really, really recommend that you support organisations like Canada Plant Savers. They've got a great list of all the potentially endangered herbs in the country, and we really make a point of not dealing in those plants, or not. We learn about them, but unless they're from sustainable sources or from cultivated sources, we tend not. We avoid them. How to harvest roots. It's good to have 2 years old tubers. You're going to mark your best to collect them in spring, or you can collect them in fall, but usually it's when the leaves have died down, so it can be hard to identify. So mark them. Bulbs, you're going to collect at the end of the growing season. Leaves, at the time of maximum growth, just before flowering is best. But if you're going to do the flowers and the leaves, like rosemary, you want to gather the blooms just as they're fully open, not too spent. Of course, it's not a hard and fast rule. I've been known to gather plants. In fact, the distiller I was telling you about that I was up in the hills above Nice, she was gathering these higher altitude, Sylvia was her name. She gathers high altitude lavandula angustifolia, and it's seeded. And I was really surprised by that, but it was the most exquisite lavender oil I have ever experienced. It was like a crystalline, it just had a mind-altering, aromatic experience. It was fabulous. We do usually stock that actually, but I don't think we have any in stock at the moment. But if you ever see it on our list, grab some. It's fabulous oil. Flowers, whole herb, so again, collected at the maximum potency. And generally that's just at the sort of peak flowering period, but of course if it's seed, then you're going to let it go to seed. And you want to do it obviously before they scatter, because you're not going to be picking up seed from the ground. Good way to do it is tie a bag over the seed head. If you've got a huge crop, that's difficult, but definitely that's a great way, you know, to really ensure that you're going to get a mature seed. It's going to be ripe, but you know, it's a good way to capture the seed before it falls. I know when I have a Vitex here in the campus botanical gardens, we've got a botanical garden on one of our campuses here, and if you're ever in Portland, you're welcome to stop by and visit. It's really a fun garden. I collect the Vitex there. I don't put the bag over there because I like to watch the birds eating a few of the seeds, and there's plenty. So it's just a matter of choice. If you don't have too many, then it's a good way to protect them. And you can thresh the herb while it's still in the bag, and basically you're just going to bang the bag and you're going to dislodge the seed so it comes off the umbel or whatever it's attached to. But if you're going to collect in the spring when the trees and shrubs begin to bud and the sap's rising, remember, you never take bark around the entire trunk. It will kill the plant. A good time to gather bark, and this is one of my favourite things about a storm, even though I hate to see storms breaking tree limbs and knocking down trees, it's a fabulous time to go out afterwards and harvest bark. If there's a tree, you know, for example, you know, like a beautiful oak or something that's been knocked down, you can go and gather some oak bark or something like that. So that's a good time. Post-harvest handling. This is again where it's important to know what kind of cell you have. So very important, very plant specific. Make sure you understand the cellular structure. Most plants you're going to want to let wilt for a few hours. You may think, wow, why? Because you wouldn't want to leave them to wilt in the sun, although I have seen lavender wilted in the sun in the field in France, and they think it does not, the French distillers, that does not affect the yield. My preference is to not do it in the sun. There are some plants you would want to wilt slightly, and again, you might wonder why. You're basically just letting the water evaporate off, because if there's a lot of water in the plant and you put that in your still and you're heating it up, it takes longer, it takes more energy, and you know, it just slows down the process. You might want to partially air dry. So they call this clover dried. So it's sort of still flexible, but it's partially dried. And that's the sage oil trichome. Look at that. Isn't it amazing, that image? So here's some good examples. Basil, you should leave it to wilt, but chamomile is best freshly dried. Cypress should be dried and distilled. That you've got to distill for as long as 17 hours. It's a commitment to distillation, I tell you. Immortelle should be harvested and distilled fresh, and I've actually distilled Immortelle. I've gathered huge amounts of wild Immortelle at summer study abroad school in Greece, and it's a fantastic plant to collect and also to distill. Vitex can be dried because it's the berries before you distill, or you might want to tincture them. They're really great tinctured as well. But the thing with Vitex berries is it's really better to crush the berries first. I don't know if you've seen Vitex before. Has anyone seen Vitex berries? It's a really pretty plant and easy to grow. It's a shrub really, but a small tree. But the berries are very, very tough. They're very firm. Oh, you haven't seen it, Barbie? Yeah, well, you guys are all your class is going to have to come to Portland and check out the gardens. But yeah, it'd be fun if you can make it up to the. Let me know if you can make it up to the lavender distillation. Vitex berries, very hard, good to crush them. Storage, we already talked about that. If you have to store it prior to distillation, say for example you're gathering, for some reason you get back home, it's too late, you can't distill. keep it out of moisture. Don't leave it out in the rain. Keep it somewhere cool, preferably air conditioned. If there's issues with storage, like, any of this, moisture, heat, sunlight, you will lose volatile material. There'll be evaporation, there'll be oxidation, there'll be resinification, which basically resinification just means the constituents and the volatiles start to thicken. So it makes it much more difficult to get the essential oil out. Oxidation is more serious. Oxidation is when a constituent actually will change in character. I mean, its chemical character will change through oxidation. It's very undesirable. How many oils are made at ACHS? Erin, that's a good question. We don't have a commercial distillery. We don't make any of our oils that we provide in your lab kits. What we do when we distill is we are doing it in a distillation class to show students how easy it is and how fun it is, and just learn the process and understand. I think it's important to really know essential oils from the aspect of the plant. I mean, these are a byproduct of the plant. It doesn't come into the world as an essential oil, and so we really want to connect everyone with the plant that the essential oil is from. So all of the examples I'm giving you, I've either visited the distiller where we purchase our essential oils from, or we have actually distilled in our botanical garden here, or we've distilled in Greece, or, as I said, we'll be distilling in Sherwood. And, we will be having a hands-on blending class, Barbie, so keep an eye out for that. Treatment of plant material, we saw that, oil glands, veins, sacs, trichomes, glandular hairs or ducts. Again, the rosemary hair oil glands, look at those, isn't that amazing? So you've just got to be super careful. Here we're just talking about crushing or cutting plant material to shorten the time. That just really increases the efficiency of the distillation process. Now, if you're doing, this is rosemary, if you're doing a distillation in a large still like this, it is a great idea to work the material a bit, cut it a bit, get it cut up a bit, so you can pack it really well. If you can't do that, you can get problems with the steam not going through all of the material. Steam will want to take the path of least resistance, so it finds the holes in the retort. And that process is just called comminution. And you can read what's on the slide. Basically why you would want to do it. You're just really improving efficiency. More steam is going to reach more of the surfaces, and you're going to speed up the processes of vaporization. Many factors that affect the quality. We talked a little bit about that. Not just the altitude of the plant, but the altitude of the distiller. That's really interesting too. So if you grow a plant, for example, the lavender at high altitude, you also distill it at high altitude, you actually produce oils of a higher ester content. Geographic origin, you will know, climate, soil conditions, cultivation conditions of the plant material, all really important things. And of course, we are focused on certified organic. I literally travel the globe seeking out certified organic, and not only that, educating growers and distillers about why that's important. So again, it's not just that we'll get a better quality essential oil. It's a much bigger global picture, and sustainability and the health of the people involved in the essential oil industry is a huge part of that. I have seen women in the rose field in Turkey gathering roses that are laden with pesticides, and these women have, tremendous issues with health, and I don't think it's the the correct way to be producing material that is going to be healing somebody at the other end. Method of production, quality of plant material, and storage after production. So that brings me to the end of my talk. We've got about, we've got a few minutes, I think, to have questions.
We started a little late.
Yeah, we did start late, so I can certainly hang out for a little bit if anyone has any questions. I'm really happy to answer anything.
And we can also unmute you too if you have access to your microphone, and I can see who has access. So if you have a question, type in the chat box, and then I can unmute you so you can talk.
Thank you, Erin. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thank you, Barbie. And yes, truly, thank you all for coming, because I know it's the middle of the day, and it can be quite difficult. So oh, good. I'm glad, Julie. I'm glad you're enjoying Aroma 101. That's a great program. So Erin, you told us you're in the master's program. Barbie, what are you doing? Do you want to share that with the class? That's great, Erin. You're in your master's. Good for you.
Here, Erin, I can try to unmute you.
Oh, you're doing the aroma dip. Terrific, and you're finishing up. And, I'd be really interested to hear what everyone plans to do with their training once they're graduated, because it's just so important to, take what you've learned and get out there and make a difference. So if anyone knows yet what they're planning to do, I'd be really excited to hear about that. And, if you don't want to share it here in class, oh, your computer is acting up. Yeah, right, that was happening to you before, Erin. Oh, working for you. Well, that's great, Barbie. Thanks. Let us know. Send us your CV. But definitely, anything we can help you with in that regard, you let us know. We've got a great coaching program here for graduates. You can reach out to Stephanie Torres here. In fact, Renee could put her email in here. She's really working a lot with not just graduates who are getting their careers up and running, but is now, reaching out to students as well who, really want to jumpstart before they graduate, jumpstart that career. How do you get that going? Get the resume going, get your LinkedIn profile working, understand how to use, write blogs, understand how to really get your name out there. Oh, fall's your last semester, Erin. That is amazing. Well done. Well, good for you. Good for you. Well, I'm really, again, thank you so much for attending this live class. I'm happy to hear any feedback. Obviously, we need to perfect our audio a bit, but we'll get better at it. And hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone, and we'll make sure to send out the recording, so keep an eye on your email.
Yeah, and we'll send out the recording and the PowerPoint. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I guess it all comes as one, right? Tells you what I know. See, she's the technical genius, not me. Thank you, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.